For those of you who don't know, I actually spent my childhood in Sacramento. I grew up here, went to high school here, graduated, and on my 18th birthday, I left this place, telling my parents, goodbye, I am not coming back. And I got in my little car. It was a little foreign car called a Renault Dauphine, and I drove to San Francisco. And I had already arranged the week before a place to live and gotten a job, so I wasn't, going out totally in the cold. I went to college at San Francisco State for the grand total of less than 3 months before I decided this was not for me. Actually, it was more like 2 months. And you have these classes that you have to take. And one of them was called Psychology 101. I was sitting in that class listening to that guy, the teacher, babble on, and I just thought, oh my God. I had questions, and I hadn't got answers to my questions about life as a child, going to the Sunday schools, to the church, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to college, which I actually didn't really want to do in terms of getting a career. I wanted to answer my questions, and it was just getting worse. So I just walked out of that class that day. I put my books on a bench and took off. I just left the place. I didn't even write a letter and say I wasn't coming back. And from that there were many little adventures, but the biggest wonderful part was meeting His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, who did answer all the questions, even the ones that hadn't been even considered. So this verse, 3:25, I'll just read the Sanskrit and Satam prasangam virya samvido bhavanti ritam narasana kata sajasan marasva bhargavatmani shadaratir vatir anukramishyati. So the translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada is, in the association of pure devotees, discussions of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Would you like to repeat? Mm-hmm. In the association of pure devotees. Discussion of the pastimes. And activities. Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is very pleasing and satisfying. To the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge. One gradually becomes advanced on the path. Of liberation. And thereafter he is freed. And his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion. And devotional service begins. Purport by His Divine Grace. The process of advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service is described herein. The first point is that one must seek the association of persons who are Krishna conscious and who engage in devotional service. Without such association, one cannot make any advancement. Simply by theoretical knowledge or study, one cannot make any appreciable advancement. One must give up the association of materialistic persons and seek the association of devotees, because Without the association of devotees, one cannot understand the activities of the Lord. Generally, people are convinced of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Because they do not associate with devotees, they cannot understand the Absolute can be a person and have personal activities. This is a very difficult subject matter, and unless one has personal understanding of the Absolute Truth, there is no meaning to devotion. Service or devotion cannot be offered to anything impersonal. Service must be offered to a person. Non-devotees cannot appreciate Krishna consciousness by reading the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literature, wherein the activities of the Lord are described. They think these activities are fictional, manufactured stories, because spiritual life is not explained to them in the proper mood. To understand the personal activities of the Lord, one must seek the association of devotees. And by such association, when one contemplates and tries to understand the transcendental activities of the Lord, the path to liberation is open and he is freed. One who has firm faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes fixed, and his attraction for association with the Lord and the devotees increases. Association with devotees means association with the Lord. The devotees who make this association develop the consciousness for rendering service to the Lord, and then, being situated in the transcendental position of devotional service, he gradually becomes perfect.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurani Prachagane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Ishvarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you for chanting enthusiastically. Sometimes people, you're giving a class, you're sitting in this chanting part, and people just kind of, or they kind of feebly, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. No, but we have the opportunity to chant. Grab it. Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Take it, so it's very nice. You're getting nicely trained, and you're getting a taste by that chant. So the purport very simply reflects the translation and lays out the very clear guidelines for what one has to do to become freed. Freed means freed from the attraction to material energy and become situated in the path of devotional service. And sometimes there's every word, every line, every sentence, every paragraph, every aspect of the Bhagavatam is intended to elevate us, lift us out of our material quandary. Yesterday morning, I was listening to the person who was giving class in New Vrindavan. I was in Soquel, California, but I was listening to the class in New Vrindavan. A devotee named Upendra. He's a new person there, I don't know him so much, but he was speaking very nicely in glorification of the Bhagavatam and mentioning, just as Dhruva Maharaj went to the forest and he had a particular agenda, which was he wanted a kingdom equal to or bigger than his father's, and yet something else happened. And he met his eternal spiritual master, and through the instructions of his spiritual master and his meditation, the Lord appeared in front of him. And when that happened, he realized what a folly it was, how foolish he was to want something of so little substance and value. He was looking for, he was looking for pieces of broken glass. He described it that way. In the same way, the Bhagavatam is Krishna himself. So it is like a diamond. And these other literatures, we have so many literatures, but keeping to a certain standard of literature, even within what we call Vedic literature, there are so many different teachings that come about. But unless one is clearly and succinctly connecting to Krishna, it is like broken pieces of glass. And the Bhagavatam is this diamond, beautiful diamond. It was a very nice consideration. But sometimes it seems, when we're not so fully elevated, that it may seem easier to take a path that's a little less lofty. We read the translation. And even the purport is there from Srila Prabhupada to help us understand the translation, and at the same time we can still sometimes struggle. So it's like, how does this apply to me? What does this mean to me? What am I supposed to do with this? So why I like this particular verse is it actually puts some steps and gives some perspective. What this means, where should I go? How should I take these steps? So, and he begins a purport by saying the path for advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service is described here. Now, that is in itself something to consider. Each one of us have to consider, is that what I want? We can say it, but is that what I want? Because if that's what we want, then it stands to reason we'll do whatever we can to go in that direction. But I think we've all have had and maybe having experiences of conflicting wants, conflicting desires, conflicting responsibilities. And it sometimes becomes a little obscure even to our own selves that what we really want is Krishna. Other things are kind of, we know that, but, so at the same time we get a little, it gets a little obscure. So when we make a determination that, yes, I want Krishna, and I do want to be Krishna conscious, then here is the process described here. And in actual fact, we find that it isn't that difficult. Little effort, So the first point is to seek the association of persons who are Krishna conscious, and then, and this is a big and is important, who engage in devotional service. So it's not just enough to have somebody who's, speaking all the verses. Like sometimes I'm easily impressed by people who can memorize verses and repeat them as if, it's like turning on the water tap and all this, nectar comes out. Because I don't have the ability to hold to memory. Just goes through. Like Jamuna was telling me, my god sisters, that the same struggle, it's just, the brain is like this, like a sieve. You put, it's like this stuff flows right out. So, but that's just one thing. You can memorize so many things. But the important things, to engage in devotional service, that's an important. So we find these people, and just like all of us are here together, we're people who are here because we want to be Krishna conscious, and we're here among those persons who are actually engaging in Krishna consciousness. Let's the first point. And then Prabhupada makes a clear statement. Without such association, one cannot make advancement. So sometimes, so many things, so many thoughts in our mind get in the way. Maybe we even sometimes think we don't even like some other devotees. That thought comes sometimes, oh, these people, those, that's the wonderful blessing of Maya trying to distract us, Because without the association of devotees who are engaging in devotional service, we can sit and read and memorize all the verses we want, but it's just put here, black and white, by Srila Prabhupada, a perfectly realized soul, Parvajakacharya. We need this association. So somehow or other we have to find it, and we have to get it, and we have to become part of it, And he makes that point, just theoretical knowledge. One doesn't make appreciable advancement. And why is that? Theoretical was just that's it right there, It's like talking about prasadam, but not putting it not tasting it. So sometimes I really love to read Jamuna's cookbook, Lord Krishna's Cuisine. It's like if you don't know it and need to have, you should get that book. It is such a, you think why would I want a cookbook? I'm not going to cook. This book is the Srimad Bhagavatam of cookbooks, and it's filled with beautiful, if you will, purports to each one of the recipes. It's filled with Krishna consciousness, So I'll read that book, and even I have no intention of cooking. What's happening?
I just want to bring it down.
Okay, yeah, thanks. But the fact remains, just by reading the recipe and looking at the picture, the taste doesn't come through. So that's theoretical. The actual activity has to follow through. So the actual activity is devotional service. But then the point is, that means giving up the association of materialistic persons. Now, when it says give up the association, so many times people think, oh, but I have to go to work and these people aren't Krishna conscious, or I have to go to school and these people aren't, etc., etc. So that's not what's being said here. Association is described, very nicely, that among devotees, that what do devotees do? They come together and they share Krishna consciousness. They reveal their hearts to one another. They, give gifts. They exchange prasadam. So this type of, what you can say, intimate association is what is being, intended here. That we associate with devotees. So we go to work, we do our business, like Srila Bhakti Vinod, do your business and go. It may be that if you have an opportunity to preach, do it, but we're not going there to work or other situations to associate. We just go do our business and go. So if we start associating by, in other words, hanging around, spending too much time with persons outside of doing the needful, it won't really benefit our Krishna consciousness. So we have to give up that type of association and seek the association of devotees. So one of the other points here is, one of the reasons this association is valuable is because without the association of devotees, one cannot understand the activities of the Lord. So the Lord is a person, persons have activities. But in general, people are more inclined towards a non-person concept of the Lord. And even if they think of him as a person, so-called, like he has a body, he has a face, he may have in their mind a long beard or something. Okay, they're seeing a person, but they're not considering this person has activities. So when we speak about Krishna and his activities, can be very unsettling to persons who are not properly informed about the Supreme Lord. And it's explained here that because unless there's that personal understanding of the absolute truth, there's no meaning to this devotion. One time Prabhupada was describing this, impersonalist activity. How can, if there's not a person, how can you have a relationship? There has to be that. And he was saying how nice Krishna, he's come, he's appeared in the form of the deity to allow us to develop that relationship and to serve him. He said, we can cook for him, he'll accept it, we can dress him. So if you're thinking that God has no form, and God is everywhere, he probably said, well then, how can you love the sky? How can you can't feed the sky, you can't dress the sky. He says it'll take all the cloth manufacturing facilities in the world that cannot produce enough cloth to dress the sky. In other words, it won't happen. But the subject matter for a devotee, because it is properly explained to us, it's not a fictional topic. It's not imagination. Sometimes people are thinking, yeah, well, these, we tell these stories about Krishna, but they're not real. They may be just to give us some idea or to entertain us. And the impersonal will also say that even at a certain, okay, that's there for a certain point, but when you get to another point, you won't think like that. I read this recently in impersonalist literature, that you can say these little activities, but when you get to a higher level, they won't be there. So it's actually the other way around. It's like when you get to a higher level, not only will they be there, you'll be part of these activities. Just like, so Prabhupada describes, somebody was trying to express that, well, how, God can't be a real person. Maybe he can be a person, but not a real one. And Prabhupada was combating, well, if he wasn't a real person, how could he stand there and talk to Arjuna? How could he explain the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna if he wasn't a real person? He was speaking and Arjuna was listening and they were having a conversation. And we can all have a conversation with Krishna when we are actually purified and freed from our, described in one purport, when the trash from the heart is removed. We can stand and we can speak to Krishna, he'll speak to us. Which brings me to another very wonderful point. Just like Srila Prabhupada wrote these purports, we know that. But there is a very wonderful consideration that Srila Prabhupada himself told the devotees that, actually I'll tell the story how it came out. There was two devotees, two godbrothers, sitting with Prabhupada and they were having a conversation and Srila Prabhupada mentioned some verse. He goes, so what is that verse? And the one devotee was like, didn't say anything, the other one didn't say anything, and each one was thinking the other one was going to say the verse. But then it was apparent neither one of them actually knew the verse. So Prabhupada said, you have to study these books. So just like, not just read them, because he said, are you reading are you reading the book? Oh, I read every day. No, study. Just like the lawyer, he studies the law books. He knows chapter and verse so well that he can defeat the opponent. Just how are we going to convince anybody if we don't know? So then he paused and he said, "Do you know that I read these books every day." And the devotees, they didn't know what to say, these two. And then Prabhupada said, "So do you know why I read these books?" And he said, "Because they're not my books. I didn't write these books. Whenever I would sit down to write, Krishna would appear and he would dictate to me, and I simply wrote down what he was telling me." So when you consider this, there's Krishna telling Prabhupada what to write. This is like, it's so amazing. Just take Bhagavad Gita, it's spoken by Krishna, and the purports that Prabhupada is writing are also spoken by Krishna to Prabhupada.
Sure.
So what an illumination. What a very fantastic situation that we have this availability from the pure devotee, because if you weren't a pure devotee, you wouldn't be able to hear the Lord speaking to you. Anyways, so it's a difficult problem, it's a difficult subject matter, and unless one has personal understanding of the absolute truth, there's no meaning of devotion. And it's very difficult for people who are caught up in material life to connect with the concept that the Lord is actually, it's not a concept, it's a reality. Krishna, God, is a person. And then furthermore, Prabhupada says that if you don't have that personal understanding of the absolute truth, then there's just no meaning to devotion. You can't be devoted to the sky. So service cannot be offered to something impersonal. Service means a person. So to understand these personal activities of the Lord, seek the association of devotees, and then by such association, then one contemplates, tries to understand the transcendental activities of the Lord, and Prabhupada says then the path of liberation is open. You take this association, you gain transcendental clarity, and the path is so you can take. Then you can really consciously decide, I want to be Krishna conscious. Because that consideration has to be there. Otherwise, we're just doing these activities, even chanting kirtan. Naturally, there will be some effect, but when a greater effect is desired, when we actually have determined that I want to be Krishna conscious, and then, okay, then here's how you do it. And then the other point is that then the devotee's attraction, by following this, the devotee's attraction to the Lord increases. And not only that, his attraction to the devotees also increase. Krishna is not without his devotees. One time in the very, very early days, somebody brought a picture of Krishna, which was nice. Brought it to the temple, but it was like there was this big Om in the sky, and then there was Krishna. And Prabhupada didn't like that. He says, no, it's not like this. This is impersonal. Krishna means, then of course Radha, Krishna, and the devotees. He doesn't come alone. So then, if we're going to become attracted to Krishna, then we also become attracted to his eternal associates and to his devotees. And then Prabhupada put it clearly, association with devotees means association with the Lord. And by making this association, then you develop a consciousness for rendering service to the Lord. And then the next step is that you become situated in transcendental position, And then gradually one becomes perfect. By perfection we mean completely free of all material contamination or material influences, material desires. And sometimes that scares people, like, well, then what's going to happen to me? I still have this family to maintain, I have my jobs to do. Krishna doesn't make it so impossible, you know.